Well, we knew they weren't going to win them all, and we knew they weren't all going to be pretty. So the Philadelphia Eagles fall to 1-1. I'm your host, Eytan Shander. Welcome to Post Flight on Philly Voice Sports. Look, the Philadelphia Eagles came into this game against the 49ers with a ton of expectations that they themselves built up just on how effortless and easy it was to cruise through the Atlanta Falcons. Well, as we know, this is a week-to-week league. This is all about matchups, and it's pretty obvious. We'll get to a bunch today. Cobb is going to join us on the show. Evan Macey is going to join us on the show. John McMullen is going to join us on the show, all with their own individual reactions. We'll get to the three key takeaways as well. But just as the overall disappointment still lingers from an Eagles loss, it was clear to me that the Eagles in week one were able to put the Falcons out of their own misery in the first quarter, first half. And the mentality this week was we can knock a team out. We can KO a team in the first half. That's not the case as you get better and better with your competition, as it gets deeper and deeper into the season. This is a huge learning experience across the board on the offense. And if you separate the two, the defense actually played okay, minus the injury to Brandon Graham. Offense, you can't blame that issue on not having a Brandon Brooks out there. So there was a major just breakaway, if you will, from what we got week one to what we got week two. And as much as the Eagles offense tried to get cute and really dictate tempo and knock out San Francisco in the first half, it didn't work. They were only able to muster up 3 points. This is a long season. It's been all about a season of patience and growth. So I can't throw things and go crazy and rip the rest of my hair out that the Eagles lost week two. But I do think this is a definite bring you back to reality moment where running whatever perverted version of the Philly special on a fourth down and getting cute on short yardage situations and asking Jalen Hurts to hold on to the ball a little bit longer and not really having that much of a game plan when you got to the red zone and when you got to short yardage, as effortless as it is to move the ball between the 20s. That's humbling. And I think definitely from Sirianni to this offense that was walking around like, hey, we can do whatever the hell we want, chest out, T-shirts, the mantra that came with it. Just slow down a little bit. Nobody's saying stop wearing the Jalen Hurts T-shirt or the Allen Iverson T-shirt or the Bryce Harper jersey, which I'm sure is coming this week, but just understand where you are right now, which is baby steps. You're in your infancy. And this was a bring you back down to reality type game because you're going up against professionals. This is not the Atlanta Falcons, who looked even worse and more disheveled week one than the Eagles did really across the board on offense until that final touchdown. But overall, I think you have to add some nuance. You have to add a little bit of balance here and understand that this is not a season that has been, you're knocked out of a Super Bowl with this loss, or you're knocked out of even winning the division. It was never about that. But at the same time, we can't ignore that Nick Sirianni, that Jalen Hurts, that this defense, of all things, after week one, raised a bar of expectation. And we got that. It's just the execution, just how prepared, how crisp we thought this team could be against the 49ers. We didn't get any of that. And to think about that pass play to Quez Watkins, 91 yards, probably the first time in the history of the NFL that we've seen a pass play that long and not yield any points at all. Not just in the air as far as that individual play, but what the hell? You didn't even get a field goal following that gigantic play. The microcosm of today, which is this league is tricky. And when you take on veterans, you take on veteran coaches, and you take on an offensive line that's a little bit better than the O-line you played last week, and a D-line that's a little bit better than you played last week, you can't just knock teams out in the first quarter. You can't knock a team out in the first half. And you sure as hell can't just sit there and rely upon what you've done in the first half and expect that, well, we were off by one or two passes, it would get better. Because you know who did that? You know who cleaned things up? It was Jimmy Garoppolo. It wasn't Jalen Hurts and this Philadelphia Eagles offense. Think about the missed opportunities that not the Eagles defense created, but Jimmy Garoppolo left on the field. Yes, this is a season about growth. Yes, This is a season week to week in which we hope to see Jalen Hurts solidify that he's the starter moving forward. Nick Sirianni, first-year head coach. But damn it, I think we can still be disappointed in the way in which this Eagles team lost because they did not seem as prepared as week one. They did not seem as crisp or on the same page. Even the game plan and the play calling wasn't on that same flow. So we have a lot to get to this edition of Post Flight, and we're going to look at it. 3 key takeaways. G. Cobb, Evan Macey, John McMullen were jammed as always, reacting to the good and now finally some bad and, yeah, even some ugly with your Philadelphia Eagles. G. Cobb is in the house, and we need a thorough breakdown of what went right and really, I think, more so what went wrong here with the 49ers. It's always a pleasure, G. As you know, Fox 29, gcobb.com. Let's start with it. What was the biggest difference from week one where everybody had their chest out, all these T-shirts, all the vibe that came with it, to week two where they kind of got caught up?
Well, you're playing against a very good football team. A team in the Niners, they have a lot of good players. And really what happened was, the Eagles came out strong in the first half. I mean, they pretty much dominated most of the first half. But I just think it took a lot of air out of the balloon when they marched all the way down. You had the 91-yard play from Jalen Hurts to Quez Watkins, 91 yards. You get down there, you're on the goal line. You can smell a lead. You can smell, 10 points. You got 10 points. You come out with nothing. You come out with Zippo, then you let them march the length of the field and punch it in on you. And they go into halftime with a 7-3 lead. I don't think they believed as much, after that happened, because they were outplaying the Niners. And I think the Niners made some adjustments. And this is where, Nick has to look at this. They made adjustments. You got to make some adjustments. Yeah. You got to look at what they do, and you got to be able to make adjustments. Now, Kyle Shanahan, clearly he was the better coach because he made the adjustments. They came out. They got their running game going. They really didn't have a great day offensively, but they did enough to get the W, and now they're on the plane smiling. The boys are giving each other the fives, and, everybody's hollering and everything. Because they made the right adjustments. And, Garoppolo, he made the throws he had to make. Now, he was really missing people in that first half. But it seemed like he got more in sync. That was a big throw he made to Debo. He made a big throw to him where he took him down to the goal line. That was that? I guess that was part of that drive. That was the drive just before the half.
And that's the one that swung.
Big play.
Absolutely.
And that was when you're playing good teams, it's not a big thing that separates you. But those plays when the game's on the line, the Eagles couldn't make one down there in the red zone. When you get in the red zone, you either count money, either somebody's giving you money or somebody's taking money away from you when you get in the red zone. That's the way it's got to be. It's more serious because, this is going to decide the game. Because if you score, and they weren't that far away. So they smelled it a little bit. They did smell it where they're playing on the level of the Niners. But the Niners showed, no, we've been to the dance. You guys have never been to the dance. You guys are perpetrators. We're real. And, they got to go back to the drawing board and they got to look and see, was Jalen holding the ball too much? Were there guys open that he missed? Or were guys unable to get open? I don't know, because I have to look at the tape myself. But that's what you got to find out because you got to have a more consistent passing game where you're able to convert 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5. You got to see more completions. He only completed 12 passes. That's not NFL level. No, it's not. So, maybe it's Jalen or maybe it's the receivers or maybe it's a combination of the two. But that's what they got to find out, and they got to correct that because you got to be better than. So that's part of it. Defensively. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, G, it felt like last week they were able to win that game in the first quarter, first half. And it was kind of like, oh, man, this is easy. We just knock people out in the first round. We could keep doing this thing. And it's like, no. You've got a heavyweight slugger right there that's going to take punch after punch in San Francisco. And maybe this is a great learning opportunity for this young team.
I think it is, because this is the way the NFL is. When you get on that elite level, you're not going to come out and beat a team in this fourth quarter and the game's over. No. The game's going to be decided in the fourth quarter. And they're capable of taking their game up to another level. And see, we saw the Niners do that. They took their game up to another level in the second half. And even I got to look at some of the guys, the Eagles' offensive line. I think they got to go to the coach and say, hey, look, we can punch that ball in. I think they could have moved Jalen under center. Hey, why wouldn't you think of doing that? When you get on like the 1 or 2 yard line, you get an athletic quarterback, put his behind on the center, and we just punch this ball in. They did it to them. You know, clearly the 49ers did it a number of times where they ran sneaks on them to get the first down, and they scored a touchdown with a sneak. So the Eagles got to think about that. And they really got to think about the adjustments that the Niners made so that they were able to run the ball on them in the second half. In the first half, the Niners only had 7 yards rushing. They wound up with 117. So that was 110 yards in the second half. What did they do? You got to make these adjustments. And, you know, when you come to the sideline, when you're with veteran players that know the game, you're talking, hey, where did that ball break? Where did that run? Where did it break at? So you're looking at it, you're talking about, hey, well, this guy kicked out on you. So we're not going to let you run the same play. You know, you're going to have to make some adjustments, and you got to make adjustments. That's the way it is on the NFL level when you're talking about good teams. And the Eagles should have been able to make some adjustments to get their passing game going. I don't know what they needed to do, but they got to look at it. And I'm going to take a look at the tape and see. Maybe Jalen's holding the ball too long. They tell Jalen, hey, don't turn the ball over. Don't turn the ball over. Well, they got to kind of change that a bit and say, hey, look, you're holding the ball too long, kid. This guy's open. This is the NFL. You're waiting for the guy to get open on Oklahoma and Alabama level. No, this is the pros. That's as open as the guy's going to get. You got to get that ball in there. You know, you got to make that throw. So that could be the case, or the guys do need a better job, do a better job of running their routes. It's probably a combination of the two, because you got young guys. You got a young quarterback throwing to young receivers. Chances are both of them have a hand in the problem. But anyway, it's got to get fixed, because you've got to throw the ball for more than that if you're going to win in the NFL. You can't complete 12 passes and expect to win. That's not NFL level.
Gcobb.com, Fox 29. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think that some of the guys on the offensive line might go in there and say, hey, coach, we want to put that ball on the ground. We're going to run. We'll run it in anybody. Yeah. We will see to it that we open some air and you run that ball in. You know, they could talk to him on that. And they talk about some things like a few running plays that they feel, hey, we can run this on anybody. We don't care who's lined up over there. We're running this down their throat. You got to have that kind of attitude. I'll get that. San Francisco has that kind of attitude. So
that's right.
You got to have the attitude if you're going to be if you want to be a playoff team, you want to be a championship team. You got to have certain times where you say, you know what? We're just exerting our will on this other team. We don't care who's lined up over there. We don't care. You're getting out of the way. We move you out here, you know. And they got to have a few plays. And probably what they do is, hey, they bring in a couple of extra linemen. They bring in a lineman, put him at fullback. He's a guard. We are running the ball on you guys. Simple as that. And you got to exert your will. And it's got to be like that. And they need that. But they got to talk and get that passing game going more. Yes, they did hit the long ball. He threw quite a few deep balls. but the intermediate routes. We got to be able to complete some passes the way they did, and they got their offense going, and that's what ultimately decided the game. The Eagles weren't able to really put together a consistent passing game that was able to convert downs, get, because you want to be able to get a little chunk yardage, 15 yards, 10 yards.
Right.
But they didn't get that going. That's got to be correct.
3 big takeaways from the Philadelphia Eagles loss to the 49ers on Sunday. Let's start with number 1, the energy, the preparation, the execution, just this command, the swagger, all of these terms that were correctly applied to the Philadelphia Eagles, both before and after their just absolutely dismantling of the Atlanta Falcons, seemed to be absent, right? Just didn't get that. We didn't get that command. We didn't get that confidence. It seemed as if no matter what, the Philadelphia Eagles would have their way with the 49ers between the 20s, including, of course, a gigantic pass to Quez Watkins that accounted for 90% of the aerial attack. But the biggest takeaway from week 1 to week 2, where was it? Where was the swagger? Where was the command? Where was the confidence? Hey, you throw a couple of haymakers at your opponent and they don't flinch, meaning you move the ball down the field and you don't get any points, or you have to settle for that field goal. So what? You need to bounce right back and act like it didn't happen. Not try and outthink and outsmart yourself by calling some ridiculous perversion of the Philly special with Greg Ward on a 4th down. And it's not to say that that lost the game or Derek Barnett's ridiculous penalty lost the game. The only thing that was truly lost was the swagger. The T-shirt swagger. Where was that from week 1 to week 2? Because I tell you, if that's gone, then we're going to be looking back at week 1 and that just ridiculous blowout of the Falcons as an anomaly, not the norm. But I think we're in some middle ground here. I'm willing to give the Eagles somewhat of the benefit of the doubt. I'm just saying, you come out week 1 and you have the T-shirts and the brand and everything else that comes with it, you kind of have to back it up. And they didn't. Lifeless. That's the first takeaway. Number 2, it won't be talked about much because of the loss and because of just how ugly and awful that offense looked at times compared to what we got week 1. But I thought Jonathan Gannon and the defense played well. I thought they played better than discussed. I thought for the most part, outside of that injury to Brandon Graham, which is going to be super difficult to replace, especially in game, I thought Gannon called a good game. I thought the guys on the field played well, especially in that first half. Look, you had that last second touchdown to Deebo Samuel to close out the first half. Only point scored by San Francisco. It wasn't the defense's fault that the Eagles only got 3 points on the board, despite being able to move the ball, at least with some chunks on the ground. The defense came in. They were prepared. The defense came in, and they had a tough task in front of them. Hargraves, Sweat, Fletcher Cox. We've seen now some buildup with these guys and some expectations as well. I think you're getting this unit starting to form as a cohesive group, minus, of course, now a pretty big injury, and that's the loss of Brandon Graham. So you had momentum, and then ultimately in the second half, that's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt you way more than Brandon Brooks' injury. The Eagles have been preparing for this. The Eagles drafted Landon Dickerson for this. They don't have anybody on that level of depth stepping in for Brandon Graham. So the defense takes a major hit, and ultimately the vets, that offensive line, George Kittle, just a better team takes over. But for being outmanned and ultimately for being outmatched, I thought the defense came in and played super well. Third takeaway. Overall, when you look at this football team moving forward, there's going to be opportunity. And I think this is the biggest takeaway from me is, can you go back to week 1 when you take on Dallas and take full advantage of an opportunity that will be there? You are going to be able to throw the football. And look, there's something that came out of this game. The biggest, finally, third takeaway for me would be about Jalen Hurts. They have a weapon in Jalen Hurts that I think is going to provide value and going to be significantly useful, if you will, as we get deeper into the season. And the Eagles, once again, are going to find themselves behind the 8 ball, down late in the game. And that's the ability for Jalen Hurts to move on the ground and take chunks out of a defense, especially when a D is playing soft. Now, doesn't have to be prevent. Doesn't have to be you're down 24 points with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and the game is essentially over. What it means is you're down 10 with the same amount of time left. You're down 1.5 scores and the D is playing a little soft. They're going to give you some stuff in front of you. What you now have is a game-breaking quarterback who has speed that can get around the end and make a guy miss. And with the D playing back a little bit, that can be enough. A huge play. You're down 10 with 6 minutes to go. A huge play on the ground, 35, 40 yards, which now I think is not an ask that's reasonable every single time. But in cases in which defenses are giving you things up front, you're no longer dealing with a statue quarterback or a guy in Wentz who's just trigger happy to get rid of the ball underneath. And you don't have to take what the defense gives you, which is just quick dump offs or quick passes. You can really maneuver Jalen Hurts. So I think if you were to try and find a silver lining, a positive following this game, the third takeaway would be Eagles have a pretty good weapon on the ground. Yes, throughout the game, and Jalen Hurts should be used that way. But most importantly, when they find themselves down, and they will find themselves down again, to be able to move Hurts in open space, especially when the defense is pulling off of you a little bit, that's going to be gigantic. John McMullen on Post Flight. You can follow John at JF McMullen. Of course, you could read him here weekly on Philly Voice, and definitely not the anticipation, execution, expectation, whatever word we want to use to describe how deflated I think a lot of people were from week 1 to week 2. But we had so much buildup, John. All of the T-shirts and the mantra and the slogans from Atlanta to San Francisco. What the hell happened?
Yeah, well, the NFL has a way of getting you, Eytan, if you're a young team with a young coach. And I think, that's part of it. I've been talking about it all week with the human nature aspect, performing so well. And Nick Sirianni talked about it during the week as well. We always talk about adversity, but you have to handle success as well. And especially when you have young players, you have a young quarterback, that young receiving group. And you think about Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, rookies or second-year players. They got to handle that success as well. I think Jalen Hurts does a good job. That doesn't mean everybody is going to do a good job. Overall, though, I thought the Eagles played well enough to win. They didn't finish. They had plenty of opportunities. They didn't get it done. You have to almost learn also as young players to finish games. The Eagles didn't finish. They had plenty of opportunities.
Where is your focus this week on the column for Philly Voice regarding the Eagles?
Well, I looked at that 4th and 3, and I saw a little pandering, Eytan. I saw a young coach. I saw a young coach who tried to ignite about 70,000 people. And by the way, it would have worked. Can you imagine if that play works? Where essentially it's Jalen Hurts, handing the ball off to Devontae Smith, flipping it to Greg Ward, who was supposed to throw it back to Jalen Hurts. Yeah. That's Philly special. Like, that was what was supposed to happen. And if it succeeds, just that place explodes. You go back to the NFC Championship game when they heard the interception across the river in New Jersey. There was such an explosion of noise and energy. Same thing would have happened here. They probably could have called a better play, though, which, by the way, you go all the way back to Super Bowl 52, Eytan. If that doesn't work, it's the worst play in Super Bowl history. Right. People are mocking Doug Peterson, making fun of him. When you don't execute with trickery or something goofy, it looks like it did today.
Is there a gamble being taken? Maybe this is a micro of the bigger picture of the pandering, from the shirts to everything else we've seen with Sirianni. You do. You're a fan of him. I think you have a Jalen Hurts shirt on right now, right?
Yeah. The Philly shirt, when he brought out the Philly stuff, I was like, come on, Nick. He's got Philly stuff, but you could see the undershirt, the green undershirt. I'm like, at least make the effort to take. It was obvious pandering. He had the Phillies hat on, which looked new, by the way. He had Allen Iverson, I think, on today. before the game. Had an
Yep.
Allen Iverson showed a jersey or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, he pandered. He tried to pander on the field. That's good PR stuff. When he does that, when he wears Philly stuff, AI stuff, that's good PR. He tried to pander on the field today. That's not good. You know the old saying, Eytan, if you listen to the fans, you'll be sitting with the fans. You got to do what's best for your football team, and that's not pandering.
I am curious. You mentioned the Eagles played well enough to win the game. I think based on just being in the city forever and knowing how the dialogue and narrative will go, so much will be talked about with Sirianni, the failed Philly special, the offense coming back down to earth. And outside of the Brandon Graham injury, which is always going to be a major issue to deal with something like that in game, I thought both Jonathan Gannon and his crew played exceptionally well today, especially compared to the offense.
Yeah, I mean, you give up 17 points in a modern NFL game, you should win the game. You should win the game. You got to find a way to score 18. So you got to hang this loss on the offense. You can nitpick and say, especially the personal fouls late when you had an opportunity. Derek Barnett, the Kayvon Wallace one, which would have been a fumble by Trey Sermon.
Right.
I don't know what he could have done. Actually, Anthony Harris probably should have gotten the personal foul on that with a little forearm shiver to the back of his head. That kind of stuff is also baked in. Sometimes you're going to get bad calls that go against you. You got to overcome them. Overall, though, bottom line defense, if you're using Jim Schwartz rules, you got to be able to win a game if you give up 17 points. And Nick Sirianni admitted that. He admitted that. The defense played well enough to win. The offense didn't carry its water today.
Last one for you, John, just real quick on the way out. What do you anticipate would be noticeably different with the offense from week 2 against San Fran to week 3 against Dallas?
Well, I think, and Nick wants to get them to this point, they got to be more consistent throwing the football. You can't count on off-schedule offense. It's great, and Jalen did a tremendous job extending plays, running the football. But you take that Quez Watkins play away, Eytan, 99 passing yards in this game. Now, you can't do that. That's part of the game. They did it. They deserve that. That's part. But at points, I only point that out to highlight the inconsistency. So the passing game wasn't there today from a consistency standpoint. Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, they got the most traffic, 12 targets between them, only 4 catches. 4 out of 12 is not very good.
Philly Voice's own Evan Macey with us on Post Flight at Evan_Macey. And you're always looking at things from a fantasy point of view as well as what happens with our squad. So I imagine that there were a lot of people who were disappointed 2 times over on Sunday with the lack, if you will, of Eagles performance. So let's just look at this, man, because clearly there's a difference in the air from what we got week 1 than what we got week 2.
I think that one of the mistakes that I made that a lot of fantasy owners probably make is that behind that we're establishing Eagles fantasy on is like one game and speculation. So, when you start a Derrick Henry or a Patrick Mahomes, you kind of have an expectation for what you get. It's pretty clear what we got last week in Atlanta is not what the Eagles offense is going to do every week. Then Jalen Hurts. If I had to pick, somebody from the Eagles to start, it would be Jalen Hurts because he's going to produce no matter what he does. You saw when they were down, in the fourth quarter, they were able to score that touchdown basically by his sheer force of will, just kind of extending plays and scrambling. And then he had a 1-yard dive for the touchdown. He's the only guy I'd have any confidence in. When I saw Josh Norman was starting at corner in my dynasty league, I have Jalen Reagor. He's the only Eagle I have. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to fire him up because I think the Eagles are going to be able to pass up and down. I would have been right if he kept his feet in bounds. There's really, Devonta did up big numbers. Miles Sanders really was a non-factor. He ran for like 50 yards on 30 carries. There's really no baseline player who is going to be, a solid 15 or 20 points every week. So it's got to be tough, and it says a lot about the Eagles offense as well.
Yeah, I thought for me, Miles Sanders, really Devontae Smith, but you knew the matchup was not going to be easy just overall as far as the focus on Smith, and he would have to overcome that. And look, it's a rookie scenario, so it's tough to bank on. I don't know about you, Evan, but I think ultimately, especially from a fantasy standpoint, if it's season long or rostering him in a DFS tournament, not having Dallas Goedert do anything at all was a real shock for me.
Sure, and I think he almost scored a touchdown on that last drive, if I remember correctly, and they called him short, and then I think Hurts just go forward.
Yep.
But now they're spreading the ball around, and we thought that Jalen Hurts showed that he had favorites last week, and he really doesn't. I'm looking at the box score. Not a single player caught more than 2 passes. Devonta had 7 targets and Reard 5 targets, and then everything else is 2 targets. So there's really no establishment of a trend, and maybe we jumped the gun a little. Both fantasy and also Eagles fans who thought that this is what they were going to be seeing every week.
Yeah, and I'm curious because we have Dallas in front of us on that Monday night game with the expectations that anybody, although the Chargers really didn't do much on Sunday against that defense, but really the expectations, especially with this offense that the Eagles have and the speed that they have, is that they should be throwing and throwing often. So if you kind of look at what happened week 2 into some expectations for week 3, is this more of a don't panic? You can still maximize guys like Reagor, Devontae Smith, even Dallas Goedert with Miles Sanders as your running back, or are you now moving in the future a little bit more cautiously, not knowing what to expect from an offense, especially as you mentioned, Evan, that's moving the ball around a lot?
It's got a home runner perspective, at least for the next week or so, or maybe a few weeks, until we end up seeing who their favorite targets are, getting some kind of a baseline for the offense. It's kind of frustrating because it feels like how Doug Peterson used Miles Sanders. That was frustrating to fantasy last year. He only had 13 carries. And you always wonder what happened because he was gaining. He had 4.2 yards carry. He can catch the football. Gainwell, I thought, was on his way to becoming a playable fantasy, maybe like a flex option, or if someone gets hurt, he's a good backup. But it's really kind of a home run or bust thing. You kind of look at the matchups like I wrongly did with Reagor versus Norman this week, and just try to cherry pick somebody who thinks have a good matchup. Look, Cowboys injury reports. Look at the fact that their 7 is a little bit beaten up, and DeMarcus Lawrence I think is out. Maybe you go for the running backs there.
Is Zach Ertz that experiment, especially from a fantasy standpoint, is that dead? I mean, if Dallas Goedert can't get any productivity, what shot do we have with Ertz?
Yeah, I mean, most of the passing yards against the 49ers came on that 91-yard pass. There really wasn't much production otherwise. Yep. And it seems like they're doing the tight end by committee thing, which means that really you almost wish that if you had Goddard, that Ertz wasn't on the team anymore, or vice versa, because they're going to switch them in and out. They're going to try to keep them fresh. I guess Goddard's going to be in there for more pass or for more blocking situations. Maybe when Ertz is in there, you can think that he's going to have a better chance of getting the ball. But nobody's really breaking through as somebody who I would want to have on my fantasy team other than Jalen Hurts. But it's been 2 weeks, and Smith, a 1,500-yard season. We don't know yet.
At Evan_Macey. You can read all that he has, not only with the Eagles, but in the fantasy world as well on Philly Voice. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Eytan.
Well, the Eagles are 1-1 following a disappointing loss to the San Francisco 49ers. So now what? Well, they happen to have a pretty big divisional matchup Monday night in Dallas against the Cowboys. Here's what you need to know. There's only one word that can define success for the Philadelphia Eagles. You ready? Pass. Throw the ball as much as humanly possible. I don't care if it's quick passes, if it's short passes. I don't care if it's Miles Sanders, Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz. It does not matter to me. Kenny Gainwell can be the leading receiver. The bottom line is Jalen Hurts has to be in the high 20s to low 30s with attempts. Take full advantage of this Dallas Cowboys defense. The Chargers didn't do it nearly enough, and you saw what happened. You can throw on this Dallas Cowboys defense. You have to throw on this Dallas Cowboys defense. It doesn't mean that your identity has to truly change and that you can't work Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell into some short passes, or you can't get the ball in Quez Watkins' hands as fast as possible, but you have to take downfield shots. This can't be a game in which it's all said and done, and we're asking why the Philadelphia Eagles only took 3 or 4 shots downfield. Devontae Smith needs to be sent downfield. Jalen Reagor needs to be sent downfield. Quez Watkins needs to be sent downfield. And by doing all of this, 2 things will happen. The obvious, of course, is the running game will open up. It'll make it a little bit softer and easier on those holes, especially minus Brandon Brooks, with Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell. But most importantly, you are now opening things up, especially around the edge and that soft middle of the field, for Jalen Hurts to move, for Jalen Hurts to use his feet, for Jalen Hurts to put even more pressure on this Cowboys defense and really cause them fits as they're moving all over the place. You think it looked bad the other night when Micah Parsons was lost? Wait until Jalen Hurts is out there causing some major fits with his arm and his feet. But Nick Sirianni and company, this ain't happening if you continue that cautious and safe play calling that really didn't get you squat against the Niners. You want to know what's up next? You want to know the biggest takeaway moving forward? Throw the ball against the Dallas Cowboys, and you'll walk away victorious. Until next week, we'll catch you up on everything going on with the Eagles and Cowboys. I'm Eytan Shander at Shander Show on Twitter. It's post-flight on Philly Voice.